Hey there, bookworms. Welcome to Pouring Over Books, a podcast where we dive into the books we love and maybe a few we didn't. I'm your host, LaShawn, and every week I'll be deep diving into what I'm reading, recommendations, and talking about all the things that we love about books. So grab your favorite coffee or tea, find a cozy spot, and let's get ready to pour over some great books together. A story can be beautiful, not because of the way it ends, but because of the way it was written. From the novel The Wedding, people. This line was taken from one of my favorite books this year that I'm going to discuss today, and I cannot believe that we are already at the end of 2024, 1 week before Christmas. I mean, have you finished your shopping? I have not. Have you finished all your TBRs for 2024? Again, I have not. I have derailed myself by restarting Fourth Wing. Because I finally decided it was time to read the second book, and I knew I needed to remember some details. So I was listening to that on my way to pick up my mom this weekend, and I'm almost done with that book now. And so now I know how it ends, and so I know I'm going to want to jump right into that. So really, like I said, I've derailed my entire TBR for the rest of the year trying to read this book. Plus, I suddenly got approved for a bunch of advanced reader copies for books coming out in January. So it's a lot. I am slightly overwhelmed. This is also my last week of work before the holidays. My son has finals. Yes, I am stressed. There are so many things to do and, of course, so little time. But today, we're going to take the time out to talk about some of my favorite books of the year. I went through and I was only going to pick like my 5-star reads, but when I was writing out my list, I decided to include 2 books that were 4-star because those books stuck with me the most. And some of my 5-star reads, when I really look at them, they were good books for sure. But the 4-star reads that I ended up including qualified as my favorites because I remembered things about them. They stuck with me. I remembered specific things about them, and some of them I've gone back and reread partial or even the whole book again since I read it the first time. So there were actually 12 out of, let me see, how many books have I read as of today? I think I'm somewhere, sorry, I gotta look it up. Goodreads. I'm behind. I'm using Goodreads and Storygraph this year because I was new to Storygraph and I just wanted to see how it was. And I'm going to have to talk about that next year, the beginning of the year. So far, I've read 123 books. My goal was 100. I too will talk about that too in the new year about how I read so much. But I really need to see. I need to really go back and see the ratios of how many books actually got 4 stars and above. Because honestly, I read some pretty good books in 2024, which is, if I'm honest, unusual. Because usually a lot of books I've read in the past few years especially have been mediocre at best. Like, I've read just a lot of stuff that's just like, okay. But I've read some pretty good books this year. And I think I had a lot of 4 stars. Most, of course, landed around 3 stars. But remember my rating scale, like I talked about in the very first episode, 3 stars for me means it was a good book. It wasn't spectacular, but it was good. Like, I may or may not read it again. I had no real problems with it. There were only 3 2-star reads this year, and they all deserved it. There was one book that was so good, but was also so controversial. And so I don't talk about that book that often, but I think I'm going to include it in my personal best list over on the blog, but we'll see. My goal this year was to read out of my comfort zone sometimes and to get back to reading more than just romance and romantasy. And I think I made good strides towards that. It was a good year. I see a lot of more variety on my list this year than I have in the past few years. So I'm proud of myself for that. So it always helps to have goals. And as the year comes to a close, I'll be trying to think about what kind of books I want to read next year and what are my goals towards that. So anyway, let's get into my top 10. I think 10. Did I put 10? I think so. Yeah, 10. Let's get into my top 10 books for this year. All right. Number 1. These are in no particular order, by the way. no particular order. These are just as I found them as I was looking through the list of books that I've read this year. Number one, we're going to talk about The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. Now, Deborah Harkness first introduced the world of Diana Bishop, Oxford scholar, witch, vampire, and geneticist Matthew de Clermont in A Discovery of Witches. Drawn to each other despite long-standing taboos, these two otherworldly beings found themselves at the center of a battle for a lost enchanted manuscript known as Ashmole 782. Since then, they had fallen in love, traveled to Elizabethan England, dissolved the covenant between the three species, and awoken the dark powers within Diana's family line. Now, Diana and Matthew receive a formal demand from the congregation. They must test the magic of their 7-year-old twins, Pip and Rebecca. Concerned with their safety and desperate to avoid the same fate that led to her parents to spellbind her, Diana decides to forge a different path for her family's future and answers a message from her great aunt she never knew existed, whose invitation simply reads, "It's time you came home, Diana." All right, so my review of this book. I tandem read this book, meaning I had both the Audible version and hardback version. I switched back and forth all day until I finished it. You know sometimes how when you wait a long time for the next book in a series, you are disappointed when it finally arrives? This is not the case with this book. So after 6 years of waiting to see the story of Diana and Matthew and their bright-born twins, we have returned. I think that this was the best book since maybe the first one, in my opinion. I am one of the rare people who love all three of the original series and even elevated my opinion of Time's Convert, like the fourth book, after it took me 3 rereads, though. It took me 3 times of reading that book to be like, oh, okay. Oh, it's not that. But The Blackbird Oracle was excellent. We stayed in the present, except for some flashbacks, and met a whole new cast of characters while visiting old ones. There was action, a steady pace, and even after all these years, a spicy scene between Diana and Matthew that had me clutching my little pearls just a bit. I was like, I see y'all, I see y'all. I loved every minute of this book and cannot wait to read the next book because it's obvious there is another one coming, and the author, has even talked about it. I am ecstatic that this is coming back. This is one of my favorite series of all time. And if I could have given this book more than 5 stars, I totally would have. It was chef's kiss. You know how it was just, how you just get that book that you just enjoyed. All right. Number 2 on my list is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Luisa, a lowly kitchen maid in Madrid, has a secret. She's a bit of a magic user. Her mistress discovers her talent and forces her to use it to climb the social ladder. Luisa gets caught up in a dangerous game involving a powerful politician, a desperate king, and a mysterious immortal. She'll have to use her magic and her wits to survive a world where magic and religion are intertwined, and the Inquisition is always watching. Now, I am a longtime fan of her YA books. She wrote Six of Crows. She wrote King of Scars, Crooked Kingdom, Siege and Storm. Those books, they're all YA fantasy books. The Grishaverse, the books, I think there's a Netflix series based on the Grishaverse. I've always loved her books, especially Six of Crows. That's like one of my favorite series. And also, I think like that series is like the second set of books that I ever listened to on Audible. Excellent book. But this one seemed like a departure from her YA. It is a little more mysterious. I listened to this one, and I think for me, it made the book because it felt more atmospheric, and everyone had the appropriate accent from Madrid at that time. Really got me. Listening to this on Audible really got me through the slow parts because this book started off slow for me. I'll say the first 3 chapters. It's the setting up part of the book, the world building and the intro to the characters. I really couldn't decide at first if I should even care about Luisa, but then our story moves quickly once Luisa gets to notice in the disregard of the Secretary of Spain's king and meets and fall in love with Santenjo. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. He was an immortal familiar. I rarely read historical fiction, but this was excellent. Once again, like I said, I was trying to move out of my comfort zone this year. So I rarely read historical fantasy, but this was excellent. It was atmospheric. It was nerve-wracking. All the historical details were so detailed. And the romantic part was magical, literally. And the last 20% of the book had me practically screaming. Yes, I loved it, loved it, loved it. That's one of the books I gave 5 stars to, I think. But it was excellent, excellent, excellent. The third book on my list is If It Makes You Happy by Julia Olivia. All right, the premise. Michelle is trying to figure out her life after divorce while taking over her mom's bed and breakfast in Vermont. She's not exactly a natural at the whole welcoming thing. But then enter her picture perfect neighbor, Cliff. He's got it all: the small town charm, the hot baker forearms, and the cutest kids. Cliff takes on the task of helping her, and even though she's planning on leaving soon, she can't help but being drawn to him, his family, and the small town. It's a classic enemies to lovers small town romance situation set in 1997. I adored this book. Imagine if Harry Met Sally and Gilmore Girls had a baby. It is this book. It's got all the fall vibes, the nice throwback vibes, and saying it's a slow burn romance that is my favorite. And it's set in a small town, and it is set in the East. I mean, oh my God, talk about nostalgia. Again, I love every single thing about this book, which made it one of my favorite romances this year. I mean, I got to the end of that book and I was just smiling like an idiot because it was so good. So good. All right. The fourth book on my list was The Wedding People by Alison Espach. I talked about this one, I think, on the very first episode, but let's review. Phoebe's having a rough time and decides to treat herself to a fancy getaway at the Cornwall Inn in Newport, Rhode Island. She's the only guest there who isn't a part of a big wedding happening that weekend. At first, everyone thinks she's a part of the wedding party, but she's really just there to relax and indulge herself. Kind of, sort of. Unexpectedly, she forms a connection with the bride. Wait a minute, let me back up. I don't know why they have that. She was not there to relax and indulge herself, and it's not giving it away because it says so. If you've read anything about this book, she was there to kill herself. Okay. Unexpectedly, she forms a connection with the bride, and they end up confiding in each other. It's a story about friendship, self-discovery, and finding solace in unexpected places. All right, so I only had a loose idea what this book was about, so I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed it from almost the very first page. I laughed out loud several times. I know there were many life lessons in this book and many underlying themes that as time goes on, I'll probably digest and think about harder. I kind of knew how it was going to end, but I was curious to see how we would get there, and I was not disappointed at all. One of my favorite books of the year. Number 5, This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. Now, y'all didn't think I was going to leave this off, did you? Soledad, a perfectionist and a control freak, has her life perfectly planned out. But when her husband betrays her, her world comes crashing down. She's forced to rebuild her life and take care of her daughters. As she navigates this new reality, she meets a man who challenges her and makes her question her carefully constructed plan. Can she learn to trust again and embrace the unexpected? Guys, I love a good Kennedy Ryan book. I live for a good Kennedy Ryan book, and this was so good. This is going, it's on my top 5 books of the year. I can say that. And Kennedy Ryan with this book became an automatic buy for me. In fact, I have already pre-ordered the 3rd book in this series because we have just got to read it. This Could Be Us is the 2nd in the Skyland series, but it can be read as a standalone. It is the story of Soledad, her stay-at-home mom with 3 daughters, dealing with the aftermath of her husband being convicted for a white-collar crime. And child, let me just say that the beauty of this book wasn't even the romance, even though, oh my God, you could feel the heat and the passion and the longing coming off the damn page. But it's not the way it was written, even though there were times where I laughed out loud and times when I said, yes, girl, yes. There are passages that I highlighted, like this right here, girl. But it's the romance that Soledad begins to have with herself ultimately that makes this book what it is. It is a beautiful thing when a woman begins to understand her worth and love herself. And it was beautiful to see this on the page. So, of course, this got 5 stars from me. Yes. Book number 6, James by Percival Everett. This is on everybody's book of the year. It has won awards. It is what it is. If you have not read this book, stop what you're doing and order it. Okay? Let me tell you what it's. This book is the new take on the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but instead of focusing on Huck, it's told from Jim, the slave's point of view. Jim, a formerly enslaved man, escapes his owner and teams up with Huck to travel down the Mississippi River. This version gives Jim a more active and important role in the story, highlighting his intelligence and his courage. So I started this one by listening to it on Libro FM. I wanted to read this one, but I was also aware and familiar with Percival Everett's style of writing and knew from experience that at least sometimes his books are easier for me to enjoy via audiobook. That's just me with him. Because he tends, if you've read any of his books, especially if you've read, what is that? The one the movie is based off of. If you read Erasure, you know how it goes off on tangents sometimes and it all comes together, but the tangents, yeah. But anyway, about 4 chapters into this book, listening on Libro FM, I got up, put on my clothes, and went to the bookstore and bought this book and finished it that way because sometimes Audible doesn't go fast enough for me and I had to know what was going to happen. So I went into this book only remembering a loose idea of what the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, how it went. You know how everybody, if you read it in high school or college, you remember the gist of it. So I couldn't remember the details. But so James was almost new to me. That's what I'm trying to say in that regard. But it's not necessary to read Huckleberry Finn to enjoy this book. It was fast paced, and I appreciated Percival Everett's more realistic tellings of the adventures, quote unquote, of this book. The main thing I can say about this is that, unlike the original book, this one points out that as a slave, Jim really never had any options. As a Black man at that time, Jim never really had any options. It's the original code switching. I mean, always changing to adjust to whatever type of white person or cruelty of slavery he comes up. He is always about to be killed or in danger of being killed. Like, it's like a constant thing, which in some ways has not changed, but I digress. There were a few big reveals that came and went so quickly that I had whiplash. And if you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. And I had to think back on how these reveals were in our faces the whole time, but I still had whiplash. There were a few things that I will say threw me off, but that's Percival Everett's way of writing, like I said before, and it always makes sense in the big picture when you get to the end. In the end, I really enjoyed the retelling of this American classic from a slave's point of view. I love watching the progression of how Jim became James. It was at times fascinating, sometimes sad, sometimes cruel, but it was a really, really good read. And now at the end of the year, I can say it is the must read for the year. Yeah. You just have to read. If you read no other book this year, read James. All right. The next book, number 7, is a little lighter, Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Premise: Justin's curse. Every woman he dates finds their soulmate right after they break up. A woman with the same problem suggests they date each other to break the curse. It's a crazy plan, but it just might work. Meanwhile, Emma, a traveling nurse, finds herself in Minnesota for a summer fling with Justin. Things get complicated when her toxic mom arrives and Justin has to care for his siblings. Can their fake relationship turn into something real? My review: I practically went into this book blind because it's Abby Jimenez, and I just automatically read all of her books now. She's a must buy for me. So every year when she releases a book, I just buy it and read it. I had the gist. Boy and girl both have the curse, and where the person they date goes on to find the one after they break up with them. They decide to date each other, break the curse, you know what happens next. What I always love about Abby Jimenez books is that even though you are going to get your happily ever after some way or another, the route to getting there is always so good, so real, and so true. The real issues that both of these characters are facing, abandonment, grief, neither being in a good place to start a relationship, while they figure out where they belong in each other's lives, is just chef's kiss. She does such a good job. And so is the intertwining of characters from previous books. Like, you don't have to read her previous books to enjoy this one, but it makes it so much better. I love this book as I do all her books. And yeah, one of my favorites of the year. Number 8 was The First Lie Wins by Ashley Else. Evie Porter isn't her real name. She's a con artist, taking on identities to pull off elaborate heists. Her latest job involves seducing a wealthy man named Ryan. But as she gets closer to him, she starts to question her life of deception. Her past is catching up with her, and she must decide whether to continue her dangerous lifestyle or risk everything for a chance at a real life. Now, I listened to this one on a long ride to pick up my mom and back, so I had about 6 hours, and this was such a fun surprise. I don't usually pick up thrillers, but like I said, this year I was trying to do different things. And I was intrigued by the blurb on the back of the book. There were so many twists and turns that I had to keep referring back to earlier pages, and I had to rewind a couple of times like, what? Wait, what? I was wrong twice, but close in the end. I love the twists and turns that kept me guessing the whole way through as a mystery thriller book should do. Was so entertained by this book. So entertained, and I'm so glad that I took the time to read it. The 9th book on my list is A Love Story for Wish. The 9th book on my list is Wild by Tia Williams. Ricky Wilde has many talents, but being a Wilde isn't one of them. As the impulsive, artistic daughter of a powerful Atlanta dynasty, she's the opposite of her famous socialite sisters. Where they're long stem roses, she's a dandelion, an adorable bloom that's actually a weed, born to float wherever the wind blows. In her bones, Ricky knows that somewhere a different, more exciting life awaits her. When an older lady, Miss Della, invites her to rent the bottom floor of her Harlem brownstone, Ricky jumps at the chance for a fresh beginning. She leaves behind her family wealth and chaotic romantic decisions to realize her dream of opening a flower shop. And just beneath the surface of her new neighborhood, the music, stories, and dazzling drama of the Harlem Renaissance still simmers. One evening in February, as a heady, curiously off-season scent of night-blooming jasmine fills the air, Ricky encounters a handsome, deeply mysterious stranger who knocks her world off balance in the most unexpected. Friends, I have been a fan of Tia Williams since reading The Perfect Find many years ago. I was so eager to read this book that I literally went into it having no clue what it was really about, other than it was a love story set in Harlem and somehow had something to do with the Harlem Renaissance. Like literally, I was like, oh, it's Tia Williams. Let me read this book. By the end, I was almost mad because this is one of those books you wish you could read again for the first time because you want that, my God, how will this end feeling again and again? When I tell you I was sucked in, I loved Ricky Wilde. I loved her brain, her character, her need to prove herself. And when one evening in February, as the heady, curiously offset of night blooming jasmine fills the air, Ricky encounters handsome, deeply mysterious stranger who knocks her world off balance in the most unexpected way. Child, the chemistry between Ricky and Ezra, so good and so heartbreaking and so joyful all at the same time. I can't really say more because I don't want to give away the plot because I feel like you need to let it unfold by not being told, but by reading it. But let's just say I was so intrigued, not only by the love story and the backstory, but the question on how on earth would it all end. But most of all, I just loved it. It was my first 5-star of the year, and it's in my top 5. It's in my top. The last book, number 10 of the year, it's called Forget Me Not by Carissa Kenwood. This book was part sci-fi, part romance. The official description is way too long for our purposes here, so let me summarize it the best I can. So basically, Eliza has been dreaming about a guy named Silas for years. Silas is a space pirate who has also been dreaming about her. They finally meet when they both end up on the same spaceship going home and realize that they're the people from each other's dreams. Now, Eliza has to decide between her current partner because she is already booed up and this mysterious, dreamy guy. Okay, so my review. The first thing you need to know is that this book is written in first-person omniscient, meaning the narrator is telling you the story from everyone's point of view in first person. So, like, is written, she's saying, I did this, I did that. But then she also tells the story, the point of view of Silas. And she says, Silas did this, he did this, but he felt like this. It's off. It's jarring. It was weird. But when I got to the end, it made sense why she wrote it that way. You will either, one, really love this book like I did and the love story. Two, like I did, also think that there was way too much sex. And for me to say there was way too much sex, after a while, you were just like, wait, again? I mean, this is spicy from like the first chapter. So that is a warning. Number three, you will soldier through it to the end like I did and be like, what the hell did I just read? Or four, get to the end and be like, this makes sense now. I was teaser, spoiler. I mean, I was all of the above. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 because the sheer audacity to write from this point of view and to make it work is just good writing. It's just really good writing. It was different. It didn't fall into any category or trope that I usually read. Bonus for the sci-fi aspect of it all and the subtle world building. I mean, but I also took off because of the ending. Because girl, what? Just like what? So, but it was an excellent book. And if you want a challenge and if you don't mind a lot of gratuitous sex or you feel okay skipping through some of those scenes, I'm going to go ahead and recommend that book. That's the last book that I had on my list. Forget Me Not. Okay, so friends, those were my 10 best books of the year. Now let's get into what I'm currently going on in my life. Currently, I am loving my Colorsoft Kindle. I finally got it. Listen, I ordered this thing back in November as I finished a marathon and deserve a gift to myself gift. It took a month to get here. I guess it was back ordered from when people first ordered it. And then I think they had to fix a few things. So it took a month to get here. And so far, I love it. I saw a lot of bad reviews of it when it first came out. And I have to say, I feel like a lot of people had high expectations that if they had just taken the time to read the description, or manage those expectations a little bit better. But people don't read. But moving on. Anywho, the name says Kindle Colorsoft. And that, my friends, is the first clue. It is literally a Kindle Paperwhite with color. It's a little heavier, but otherwise it's a Kindle Paperwhite with color. So you know how Paperwhites have that grainy black and white look because it's meant to be easier on the eyes and take away that glare because it gives you less eye strain that way because it's like reading on paper. So the colors are soft. It does have a vivid setting where you can make the colors a little more vivid for like if you're reading graphic novels or comic books or a magazine. And I turned it on and it's fine to me. So the colors are soft. They're not like colors on your iPad or your iPhone Kindle app. So they're not bright and sharp like that. I mean, it's sharp, but it's not sharp like an iPad would be. But since my main objective with a Kindle is to have something that causes less eye strain because I spend all day at a computer, this works for me. I've always wanted to be able to see my covers in colors, and I love that I can now highlight in cover because as someone who reviews books, it's helpful for me to help categorize my thoughts. Another reason why I got this is for the battery life. Amazon claims that it has 8 weeks worth of battery. I know when I unboxed my Kindle, it was at 54%. I read all weekend, downloaded all the updates that came with it, and downloaded some, quite a few books. And last night, when I woke up this morning, it was at 52%. So we shall see. I'm actually going to put it on the charger this morning so that it's at 100%, and I'll update you when I finally have to charge it again. So what is this, December 16th? Yeah, so I will do it again. But I like it. It's a little heavier than a normal Kindle Paperwhite. All the buttons are still the same. It does, to me, navigate a little easier than the other ones did. Oops, I did not want this one. Shit, I opened up a wrong book. I'm playing with it right now. I like it, and another thing I like is that now your Audible books are on there. I don't think you can't listen to them on there, but your Audible books are there. Like you can actually see what's in your Audible library. I do like that because my other Kindle didn't have that. But I really just, hold on a minute. I just want to see something. You can listen to Audible on here. Like you can have it open and listen to your Audible books, and it syncs. Because I was listening to like I said, I was listening to Fourth Wing, and it syncs. So it's kind of cool. I like it. It is what I wanted because I needed a new one anyway. I am pleased so far. These are just my initial thoughts. I'll probably post a full review soon on social and the blog after I play with it for about a week or two, just to see what I really think. Currently side-eyeing Rocket Money. Now listen, I only mention it because it's that time of year where everyone is saying, oh, I'm going on a budget next year, I'm paying off credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. And people always suggest Rocket Money. I love that for you if that is your goal. And yes, Rocket Money does help you see everything in its place, alert you when bills are due, when transactions come in, et cetera, for a small monthly fee. Now, while I love it for that reason, because I am challenged when it comes to keeping up with these things. So I like it automatically done for me. I just plug everything in and then I can go in there and I can look. There is a feature that I've always seen where they say they can help you negotiate for lower fees on some of your subscriptions. I have never taken them up on that offer and I was curious. So I clicked on yes on one of my newspaper subs. Yes, I am one of those people who gets the digital version of several newspapers because I like my news. I may not be watching the news on cable networks or regular TV right now, but I like to be able to read my news. And plus, newspapers do have more than news. They're always personal stories, lifestyle stories, whatever. Anywho, plus I like the New York Times because I also have the cooking part of it, which is really my favorite part. Anyway, they negotiated like a $250 difference for the year. And I was like, wow. Because I was paying like $20. They got it down to like 99 cents a month for a year. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Then they informed me that their fee was half of that and asked if I wanted to pay it right there or in installments. So really, I didn't save $250. I only saved $125. So to me, that's not a deal. I won't be using that again. And I just wanted to warn people because I don't know if anybody but me didn't read the fine print and realize that that is what they were going to do. You know, currently reading. Again, I got sucked back into Fourth Wing. So I am rereading that and finally started on the third book of the Sun Queen series that I was reading, Tale of the Heart Queen. And I'm getting ready to start Death of the Author by Nadima Okurur. For it comes out January 7th, I believe. I got an advanced copy last week. And since I had already put it on my list of most anticipated books for 2025, I had to go ahead and start on it pronto. I have like 3 books that come out the first week of, 3 books that come out the first week in January that I have to get to. There's A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young, like one of my automatic reads, Death of an Author. And there's a book by Chloe Leese that I want to read. It's a romance novel. But I have advanced copies for all of these books. And so I've got to get to them like in the next couple of weeks, which is good because this is my last week of work. And Christmas week is coming up. So after Christmas, after I've cooked and I'm stuffed, I will have plenty of time to devote to reading. And I'm excited about that. Okay, friends. So that is it. This is the last episode of the year and of season 1. Can you believe it? I am really loving sharing all of my book thoughts with everyone. It really helps me get all of my book stuff out of my head. And it's lovely to know that there's somebody who wants to listen, that there are several somebodies who want to listen. I appreciate each and every last one of you for listening when I put out these episodes, for downloading, telling your friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you don't mind, of course, please leave a review because, friends, that is how we find other book friends and grow. I am looking forward to continue to grow my book community next year. I'm going to be a little more active on Bookstagram. I'm always adding new things to my to-do list. I'll be a little more active on Bookstagram because, friends, I love books, and I've decided next year to lean into the things that I really love. I'm formulating what my vision, word of the year is going to be next year. And I know it's around this theme of, like I said, leaning into the things that I really love, and reading and books is one of them. So stop fighting it and just go with the flow. So anywho, thank you once again. One more thing, last but not least, don't forget you still have time to join our book club for next year. Our first book is going to be Fly Girl by Omar Tariq. I'll put a link in the show notes to join, or you can go over to my Substack at LaShawnWilts.substack.com and sign up there. There will be info coming soon in your inboxes if you have already signed up next week about our schedule and some administrative things before we get started next year with the book club, because we're going to hit the ground running. Yes. January 1st is in the middle of the week, but we will be starting that next week. So get everything in order. As for the book for your Christmas list, I don't know. Anywho, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, and I will see you in 2025. Bye.